My guest tonight is a former U.S. Congresswoman. She spent 12 years in Congress. She served 6 terms, and she served on the House Armed Services Committee and famously grilled Donald Rumsfeld over the missing $2.3 trillion, which, funnily enough, he declared missing on the night before 9/11. So, I don't know, what a day to bury news. How lucky can you get? She also complained about the lack of U.S. military response on 9/11. Cynthia also served as a commissioner on the Citizens Commission of 9/11, and in Congress she advocated unsealing records on the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., as well as an investigation into the murder of Tupac Shakur. She continued to criticize Bush over the 9/11 attacks, supported anti-war legislation, and introduced articles of impeachment against President Bush, Vice President Cheney, and Secretary of State Rice. She left the Democratic Party in September 2007. She's been a member of the Green Party since then, and in 2008 they nominated her for President of the USA. On 30th of December 2008, McKinney, I've told you her name already, she was aboard the ship Dignity with physicians, medical supplies, and activists, which was then rammed by the Israeli Navy at night whilst in international waters. 6 months later, on 30th of June 2009, wishing to try her luck again, she was aboard the Greek-flagged Free Gaza movement ship Spirit of Humanity, which was trying to do the same thing, to go to Gaza with supplies. But her ship was impounded by the Israeli Navy. She was arrested and thrown into jail for 7 days. And eventually deported to the USA. My guest tonight is the extraordinarily brave Cynthia McKinney. Cynthia, welcome.
Thanks. I'm already on the edge.
That is such a good accent. I love that. A Southern States accent. So it's quite amazing to have somebody like you on my show. I'm very, very honored. I've heard you speak twice at AV3, and when I said you were a very brave woman, I really mean that. You are extraordinary, and you shame so many people because you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. You've seen injustice clearly in your time in Congress. You've been at the heart of Congress. You've met these people. I'm really interested to know how you kind of discovered that things weren't right in the heart of America's government. Can you start with that?
Wow. Well, I guess the first indication that I had that things might have been a little off-kilter was actually in my very first congressional campaign, which took place in 1992, and that in the United States was the Year of the Woman.
Right.
Well, last time I checked, I'm a woman, right?
Okay.
But I would go to peace organizations that give money to candidates that, supposedly support peace. Mm-hmm. And when I was in the Georgia legislature, I ran for Congress from the Georgia legislature. And there, when George Herbert Walker Bush decided to drop bombs on Baghdad, I went to the floor of the House on a point of personal privilege, and I said, among other things, George Bush ought to be ashamed of himself. At that point, my colleagues got up and walked out on me, and I became a pariah, basically, in the legislature and around the state in the special interest press. And now, I think that would qualify me as someone who would support peace initiatives in the Congress. Well, I went up to Washington trying to find money for my campaign, went to various peace organizations, and couldn't get funded. I also happened to be an environmentalist. I had carried environmental legislation in the Georgia legislature, and I was a member of the Sierra Club. But when I went to Washington to present my credentials to the PAC, the Political Action Committee, which finances certain candidates that are endorsed, it was very difficult for me to get the endorsement of my own organization. And then, of course, being the only woman in the race, I go to the various women's organizations that have political action committees, because that's where you can really get a lot of money through what's called PACs in the United States. And I wasn't woman enough to qualify for funding from the women's organizations.
You weren't woman enough. Is there a
I wasn't woman enough. And so then it became very clear to me that if you didn't sort of play by the rules, then you didn't get the reward. Now, one of the other things that sort of established the rules was a fax that came through my campaign fax machine from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And that organization is loosely called the Israeli Lobby in the United States, or it's sort of like the leadership political organization for the Israeli Lobby. And they had several items on this fax. One was the military superiority of Israel, Jerusalem as the capital city, continued funding, economic support for the state of Israel.
Are these aspirations you're talking about? This fax had the aspirations of the Israelis?
No, these were, this was a pledge.
Oh,
and as a candidate, I had to sign that this is what I would support when I was in Congress, were I to win.
This is a private interest group that was trying to force you to make a
commitment to another country. And I refused to sign the pledge. And because I refused to sign the pledge, then eventually I had no money. I had no support from, you know, big name people. And the fact that I was a woman didn't really carry much weight even with the women's organizations, because I had not played by the rules.
Do you think some sort of word had gone out about you?
Oh, it was clear, because I received phone calls saying, I want to do a fundraiser for you. And some of these people were, you know, famous people. And they wanted to do a fundraiser for me. And of course, I was happy. I was overwhelmed. And we would get into the planning maybe 2 weeks down the road. And then they would ask me, did you sign the pledge? And I'd say, no, I didn't sign the pledge. Sorry, I can't do the fundraiser for you. And this happened over and over and over again. So people have an idea and they wonder why is it that the U.S. Congress votes the way it does, even in the midst of Operation Cast Lead. After my boat had been attacked by the Israeli military, we have 535 members of our Congress cast a vote in support of Israel, and only 5 members of the Congress vote no. And it's because we have become burdened with the influence of special interests that have completely overtaken. Well, I mean, you can look at the so-called healthcare debate in the United States now. It's not really a debate about healthcare. It seems to be turning into a mandate for everyone to buy health insurance. And health insurance is not a guarantee of health care. And even if we look at the statistics with respect to health outcomes, life expectancy, infant mortality, which give us a gauge on the quality of life that a particular country experiences, all we need to do is go to the CIA World Fact Book, where they rank the countries by these outcomes. And what you'll see is that the UK ranks higher than the United States, although the United States spends far more money.
Isn't it true that
Canada ranks higher, the European community of countries ranks higher, and the United States is like 50th on one index and 48th on the other.
Isn't it the case also, and I know the Americans must hate this, that Cuba is virtually at the top in terms of healthcare?
Well, I have actually been, unlike most Americans or unlike many Americans, I've been to Cuba several times. And Cuba, interestingly, exports doctors and the United States exports bombs.